The tension in Washington reached a boiling point today as an explosive on-air clash between Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett and political firebrand Karoline Leavitt shook the political establishment. It began during a nationally broadcast panel discussion that was supposed to cover bipartisan legislative priorities for the fall session. But almost instantly, the conversation veered into hostile territory when Karoline accused Crockett of deliberately blocking a bill to protect American youth from ideological brainwashing. With her voice sharp and unyielding, Leavitt declared that Crockett was pushing dangerous values into the bloodstream of our culture, implying that the Congresswoman's agenda was nothing short of a national threat. Crockett, visibly unmoved by the accusations, leaned forward in her seat, her eyes locked on Karoline with the precision of a surgeon about to make the first cut. "What you call protecting youth," she fired back, "is nothing more than silencing voices you disagree with. You're not protecting anyone. You're protecting your own narrative." The studio's air thickened as producers frantically signaled for a return to moderation, but neither woman relented. By the time the moderator attempted to steer the discussion back to policy, the damage was done. Social media lit up within minutes, hashtags like #Crockett versus Leavitt and #Freedom over Fear trending across platforms. Outside the Capitol, groups on both sides began to gather, waving signs, chanting slogans, and live streaming their reactions. It was no longer just about a bill. It was a full-scale ideological battlefield. The stakes had shifted, and both Crockett and Leavitt seemed prepared to escalate. By midday, the confrontation had already spilled beyond the studio walls, dominating cable news cycles and fueling political talk shows coast to coast. Karoline Leavitt, never one to retreat, doubled down in an impromptu press briefing outside the Capitol steps. Flanked by a cluster of conservative allies, she accused Jasmine Crockett of weaponizing her position to undermine traditional American values, her tone dripping with indignation. Cameras flashed as Leavitt waved a stack of papers, claiming they contained proof of Crockett's alleged bias in federal funding decisions for education programs. Reporters pressed for specifics, but Karoline sidestepped, pivoting instead to a fiery monologue about the erosion of patriotism and the moral decay fueled by the radical left. Her supporters cheered every line, but critics quickly pounced on the lack of evidence. Within minutes, Crockett's communications team issued a statement calling the claims baseless political theater and inviting the public to review every federal funding decision she had backed. Later that afternoon, Crockett herself appeared on a prime-time political segment, her composure a deliberate contrast to Karoline's impassioned performance. "The truth isn't as flashy as a stack of random papers," Crockett said, her voice steady but firm. "But it matters. And the truth is, every dollar I've fought for has gone to help real communities, not to score points in a culture war." Her words resonated across social platforms, drawing praise from advocates and fact-checkers alike. The divide was deepening. For Leavitt, this was a chance to galvanize her base. For Crockett, it was an opportunity to dismantle what she saw as a smear campaign in real time. Neither showed signs of blinking first. By the next morning, the clash had morphed into a full-scale political spectacle. Major news networks opened their broadcasts with split-screen footage. On one side, Karoline Leavitt pacing a stage at a conservative conference. On the other, Jasmine Crockett delivering a sharp rebuttal at a community town hall. The visual contrast was striking. Karoline, all fire and fury, railing against what she called an agenda that's rewriting the American story, while Crockett, measured but piercing, spoke directly to constituents about transparency, fairness, and the dangers of misinformation. Leavitt's speech leaned heavily into emotional triggers, invoking images of a nation losing its backbone and families under siege. She claimed Crockett's policies were an open door for chaos, painting a picture of America spiraling into moral ruin. The crowd roared, the applause punctuating every accusation. It was exactly the kind of soundbite factory her team had planned. Meanwhile, Crockett's town hall was anything but performative. Standing among local residents, she fielded raw, unfiltered questions about housing, healthcare, and education. Her answers were blunt, occasionally laced with biting humor. If helping kids get books and schools get funding is chaos, then maybe we need a little more chaos, she quipped, drawing laughter and applause from the room. Social media became the battlefield. Hashtags like Stand with Karoline and Truth with Crockett trended simultaneously. Comment sections turned into verbal war zones. Every clip, every phrase was dissected, memed, and weaponized. Analysts warned that the fight had moved beyond the two women. It was now a proxy war for the larger ideological divide tearing through the country. And both sides knew it. Neither intended to surrender the narrative. By midday, the fight had spilled into the halls of Congress. Reporters swarmed the corridors, shoving microphones at any lawmaker willing to comment. Karoline Leavitt, flanked by a small entourage of aides, walked briskly toward the chamber doors, delivering her sound bites with calculated precision. Jasmine Crockett is not just wrong. She's dangerous, Leavitt declared, her voice steady but laced with venom. She's using her platform to push narratives that undermine the very fabric of this country. And I'm here to say, enough is enough. Her remarks were immediately met with a wave of pushback, not just from Crockett's allies, but from several centrist Republicans wary of Leavitt's escalating rhetoric. Still, Karoline didn't flinch. This wasn't about nuance, it was about dominance. Just minutes later, Crockett appeared at the opposite end of the corridor, the buzz of cameras following her like a storm. She didn't wait for the first question. She launched into her rebuttal with a directness that silenced the chatter. If telling the truth makes me dangerous, then we should ask who benefits from keeping the truth hidden, she said, locking eyes with the nearest camera. I'm not here to comfort power. I'm here to hold it accountable. The dueling press scrums became instant viral moments. Side-by-side clips flooded Twitter and TikTok, each camp claiming victory. Memes mocked Karoline's stern delivery as scripted fury, while others painted Crockett as the chaos candidate. But under the noise, something deeper was brewing. The confrontation had begun to overshadow the legislative agenda entirely. Staffers whispered about stalled votes, frozen negotiations, and the growing sense that this feud was now more than political theater. It was a political earthquake. The House floor was electric. Conversations hushed as Karoline Leavitt rose from her seat, clutching a thick folder as if it were a weapon. She marched to the podium, her heels clicking with deliberate force. "Colleagues," she began, scanning the room like a prosecutor before a jury. Today we face a crisis of integrity. Representative Crockett has crossed lines that no public servant should cross, lines that threaten the trust our constituents place in us. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the chamber. Karoline flipped open the folder, pulling out pages of printed tweets, transcripts, and selective quotes. This is not hearsay. These are her words. Words that mock the very institution she claims to defend. Words that embolden division. She paused for effect, letting the silence grow heavy. From her seat, Jasmine Crockett slowly rose, her expression unreadable. She didn't rush to the podium. She glided there, calm and deliberate, as if every step was a statement. Standing tall, she addressed the speaker first, then the chamber. "Madam Speaker, I will not allow my record to be twisted into a caricature for someone else's campaign video," she said. "I stand by my words because they were spoken for the people who sent me here, the ones whose voices are drowned out in the echo chambers of privilege." The tension was so thick it seemed to bend the air. Members shifted in their seats, some pretending to scroll their phones, others leaning forward, riveted. The speaker's gavel struck once, but neither woman looked away from the other. It was no longer just a debate. It was a duel, fought not with weapons, but with rhetoric, ambition, and the weight of millions watching. Karoline's lips curved into a thin smile, the kind politicians wear when they think they've cornered their opponent. "Representative Crockett," she said, voice dripping with mock courtesy, "if you truly believe you're here for the people, then explain why your recent statements undermine our national security and embolden those who wish to see this country fail." Her words landed like darts, each one aimed at painting Jasmine as reckless and dangerous. The chamber buzzed with whispers. Cameras from news networks zeroed in, eager for the next soundbite that could fuel the evening broadcasts. Karoline leaned slightly forward as if to drive her point home. "Because to me," she continued, "this is not leadership, it's a liability." Jasmine didn't flinch. She clasped the podium with both hands, her gaze steady, her voice carrying a measured fire. "What's a real liability?" she replied. "Is mistaking dissent for disloyalty. It's believing that silence in the face of injustice somehow equals patriotism." She scanned the chamber, meeting the eyes of colleagues on both sides of the aisle. "My loyalty is to the Constitution and to the citizens who live under it, not to preserving someone's political comfort." The room seemed to shift. A few members nodded almost imperceptibly. Others stiffened, unwilling to show any sign of agreement. Karoline's jaw tightened. "So you're saying I'm protecting my comfort?" Jasmine's reply was immediate. "I'm saying you're protecting an illusion, one that keeps power concentrated where it's always been." For a moment, no one moved. The speaker's gavel came down sharply, but the air remained charged, as though everyone knew this exchange was far from over. Karoline straightened her posture, her voice sharpening. "You speak about illusions, Representative Crockett, but the only illusion I see is your belief that tearing down established systems will somehow make them better." She gestured broadly, as if appealing to the invisible jury of public opinion watching at home. "The reality is, your so-called reforms will leave our nation weaker, not stronger." Jasmine stepped forward, closing the physical and rhetorical distance. "What leaves a nation weaker," she countered, "is pretending that corruption and inequity are just the cost of doing business. What weakens us is turning a blind eye while the people who trusted us to represent them are left behind." Her words cut through the tension like a blade, precise and deliberate. Karoline's eyes narrowed, but Jasmine pressed on. "We were not elected to protect power. We were elected to challenge it when it stopped serving the public good. If that makes some people uncomfortable, then perhaps they should rethink why they're here." A hush fell over the chamber, the weight of her statement pressing on every ear. Reporters scribbled furiously, knowing they'd just witnessed a quote that would dominate headlines. Karoline shifted in her seat, visibly unsettled, but said nothing more. Jasmine let the silence hang for a moment longer before stepping back from the microphone, her expression resolute. She knew the fight wasn't over, but she had made it clear she wouldn't be intimidated, no matter who stood across from her. And to those watching, her message was unmistakable. The truth would not be silenced. If you believe in holding the powerful accountable, in exposing the stories they don't want you to hear, make sure you subscribe. The next battle is coming, and you won't want to miss it.